Who remembers the Hex Girls? So, for anyone who doesn't know, the Hex Girls are a girl eco goth band that is from Scooby Doo. They specifically premiered in Scooby Doo and the Witch's Ghost. They have subsequently made at least one additional appearance in a movie like 15 whatever years later, where it's like there's a music competition and they're part of it, and then like the Scooby-Doo gang and them work to solve whatever the mystery is because reasons in one of the other movies. um I love the Hex Girls. Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost is by far my favorite Scooby-Doo movie. Nothing against the other ones, but that one is by far my favorite one, and I think these three are the main reason. I got this shirt a little before Christmas. I know it is not Christmas themed at all. I know it's not Halloween at all, but I figured with what happened with Stussy in this last chapter, I could wear this shirt and I didn't have to wait until Halloween or, until October to wear it. So I'm happy in that regard. Also, we have the dog in the background because he decided to grace us with his presence today. Um, um, so, let's talk about Stussy. I'm aware that a lot of other people are going to be doing videos about Stussy, this weekend and into this week and everything. And of course, all of us are going to have our own ideas about it and such. Some of them are probably going to overlap. Beyond like one or two chapter reviews, I tried not to really watch anything else before I made this video that, was like a lot of other people's theories about Stussy. So I'll have some that are my own, but I'm sure they'll sound similar to what other people say because that's what happens, of course. So many people were like, "Oh, Stussy's gonna be this and Stussy's gonna be that," and she's being very very suspicious and everything right now, which is true. At Egghead, she's been being very suspicious, and now we may have an idea why. Now it just looks like I decapitated the dog. He's fine. So I had also debated about wearing my kind of black and red witch's dress that I have, but I'm like, no, I don't really want to have to put that on and then take it back off again. So I just went with my Hex Girl shirt because it's like, I can wear that. Over the last several weeks in One Piece with Egghead, we've been getting, Germa's emotionless voyage, whatever, where we're getting all of those memories, seeing what's going on with the Germa, that they escaped Whole Cake Island, that Caesar is with them, that now Caesar and Judge have met again and everything. Because, they didn't really interact at all during the tea party. Of course, this brings up a few questions about the tea party, but they didn't really interact at all at the tea party. But the other thing is, now we're getting these flashbacks within technically a flashback, where we're seeing Vegapunk and, the rest of Mads and everything, like getting this, this is what happened, that they were funded by Dufeld, who is one of the underworld, emperors of the underworld or whatever in One Piece. That I don't remember exactly. He's like the lone shark king, I think, if I remember correctly. And it was the funder of the Mads science group, which had, a younger Vegapunk, Judge, Caesar, Queen, and then a woman. Throughout the course of this chapter, we can kind of determine who that woman is, and other people had theories, of course, about who it was, and a lot of them were correct. And we get all of that, and we get that flashback, and we kind of see that, and then in this week's chapter, for 1072, we got to see, I believe, because it was like 1071 and 70, it was like 70 and then like 72, because the chapter before that was like a big color spread with like Uta and the Straw Hats, which I really liked, by the way, because I'm a big Uta fan. But we got to see, Judge, Queen, and Vega and Caesar all kind of having their own, little aspects of science that they tend to go after. As I refer to them as somewhat of like weapons of mass destruction, because they're all being dinguses. Because Judge is starting to make his weapons that he'll then use in order to power up the Germa and everything, and Queen is working on making all of his viruses and everything that he'll use down the line. Starting that process there. And then for Caesar, well, Caesar's like holding like an artificial devil fruit, but we also know that Caesar tends to do lots of poisons and stuff like that, and he clearly has his devil fruit already at this point in time. Judge never had a devil fruit, and then we don't know if Queen has his brachiosaur devil fruit yet at this point in time, since that's never explained when he got it, or at least has yet to have been explained of when he got the devil fruit. But we get to see some of this flashback in, the cover story, and we can kind of deduce some other stuff, but we don't see Vegapunk and we don't see the woman. Now, kind of what we can deduce from this is Judge was not the one to come up with the cloning technology, because he went after the weapons. He started making weapons and stuff like that. And what I'm assuming is that it was either Vegapunk or the mysterious woman, and a lot of people are like, oh, it's probably this, Vegapunk and the mysterious woman that came up with the cloning technology. Now we know that all of them were involved in like cracking, the lineage factor concept. We all know that. That wasn't surprising. And then they all used that for their own for their own goals that they were going after. Now I have a slight headcanon thing about like, Dufel did kind of fund this place, but he's a loan shark, and he also, well, he's currently dead. In the actual canon of the story, he's dead. Stussy straight up just killed him, I'm pretty sure, at the Whole Cake Island, at the tea party. But in order to get the tomato box, whatever it is, and what we end up, my thought is that Dufel funded it, and that he specifically found some of these other scientists, Queen and Judge and Caesar and possibly the mysterious woman, and then he like told them that, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys money to do this, and then you guys can, I do want to have some payment for all of this, for the fact that I'm giving you this. And then Vegapunk was probably brought in somewhere along the lines. Either he was originally part of it. I don't remember if we ever have found out what MAD stands for. I don't remember. But it was supposed to be like and the dog wants out of the room. Do you want out of the room? Is that what you want? Okay, I'll open the door. Dog was being a slight pain, so it's like, I have the door open. You can go out or you can go back on the bed, but I can't leave the door open. Because there's too much other noise in the house. So, kind of what we can deduce is that like Dufel brought all of these people together. I don't remember if we've got an answer as to what MAD stands for, but Dufel brought all these people together, and he's like, okay, I'm going to fund your science stuff. It's a philanthropic adventure, investment and stuff like that. I wouldn't necessarily say it panned out as being philanthropic, but there was a lot of, science going on here. And given what we've kind of determined is that it probably took place between 40 to 35, 40 to 25 years ago. Like there's like a 15-ish year time frame that this can kind of take place in. Is my thought. And I think the dog saw something outside. But what we can kind of deduce is that, yeah, it was Vegapunk or the woman, the mysterious woman, that kind of came up with the cloning technology, and then Judge ended up like stealing that and then using that to clone, all of his Germa soldiers. Basically what we get with this chapter is it's basically either partially confirmed or completely confirmed that the mysterious woman was was Miss Bocking, who is the one that's probably the one in the picture in the flashback is Miss Bocking, who is Weevil's, Edward Weevil's mother. And we find out through the course of this chapter that Stussy, the queen of the underworld, pleasure district, and CPI just zero agent, Stussy is actually a clone of Miss Buckingham Stussy, who's Miss Bocking, and that this Stussy was the first clone that was made by Mads, first successful clone. And she has some form of a devil fruit power, or she has also had genetic modification made to her that gives her certain abilities. So going into this, information that we do know, or at least some of the information that we have about Miss Bocking, who is Weevil's mom. She is the self-proclaimed lover of, Edward Newgate of Whitebeard. And she is the mother of Edward Weevil, who is a former warlord of the sea. And the way that it was translated is that when translated, her name Bocking means like fine or penalty. And we also see that she is a very greedy woman. The reason she's trying to use Weevil to go after all of these other pirates that used to be members or allies of Whitebeard is because she wants to get all of any of the money that's left over. Marco has said that there's not really any money left over. After dividing up the treasure, Whitebeard tended to send a bunch of money back to Sphinx Island to help protect the island and to help, with keeping the island safe and with giving them resources. And then, he still liked booze, so he would get booze off of people. And such. So Whitebeard wasn't like this exceedingly wealthy person, as opposed to Big Mom, who has like a huge amount of treasure store and stuff like that. And, Kaido that probably has a fair amount. Don't know exactly what Shanks does with his money, although booze definitely is up there on the list considering how often we've seen him and his crew partying over the years. For the most part. But for what we can kind of, it says, according to the information we have, that Miss Bocking is 76 years old. As I said, she's very greedy. She does seem to love her son. She does seem to have like at least somewhat of affection for Weevil. And he's basically a big mama's boy. He is, I believe, supposed to be 35 years old. Edward Weevil, Whitebeard Jr., whatever you want to call him, he is 35 years old, and he is supposedly, Bocking's son with Whitebeard. My thought about what's going on with Miss Bocking is that we know that 40 years ago, or at least, during the God Valley incident, before that, she is a former member of the Rocks Pirates. Which she was there with Whitebeard and Big Mom and Kaido and Shiki and Wang Ji and Silver Axe and Captain John and whatever. And Roxy Zebek and everything, that she was part of that group. And out of all the different members that we know that were on the crew, Big Mom was definitely not a doctor. Rox doesn't give off doctor vibes, or at least not from what we know of. Probably not Kaido. Probably not, Whitebeard. We don't know about like Wang Ji and Silver Axe. I don't think Captain John would have been a doctor, but I could have been wrong. But there probably was a doctor on the crew, and my thought is that Miss Bocking, or that Buckingham Stussy, that was what she was called, that she was the doctor of the crew. And that she was the one that would like help, stitch up the, all the different, if anybody got injured and stuff like that, that she was the one that helped with that stuff. Because even on a crew that seemed as dysfunctional as the Rocks Pirates have been portrayed to be, from what we can see, that might get a little bit adjusted depending on once we get more of like, if we get more of a Roger flashback and a Rocks flashback, we'll see what happens there. But the Rocks Pirates seem to be a lot more dysfunctional. But you still need someone that can help with treating injuries and stuff like that. And that may have been Miss Bocking. I'm still going to refer to the Miss Bocking that is the original as just Miss Bocking, because that's what we're used to calling her. And then Stussy will still be Stussy. So just to be clear on that, I will attempt to do that. My thought is that she was the doctor on the crew. And that she had been also like a scientist in her own right. Also, I point out the fact that with as much as Big Mom was pregnant during the whole time frame that she would have been on the Rocks Pirates and stuff. As many times as she was pregnant, she probably had to have someone help deliver her children. And that doesn't seem like something that Kaido or any of the others seem to be interested in. And it may have been Miss Bakin that helped with delivering a lot of Big Mom's children that would have been born during the time frame that she was on the Rocks Pirates. Which I did the math at some point, but it was like whatever child up through whatever child would have been born during that time frame. Given the dates and everything that we have. And she would have had to have someone that can help with delivering the children, because as much as a boss as Big Mom is in that regard, I don't think she would have been able to deliver all of her children on her own. So I'm assuming it was Miss Bakin that probably helped with that. And then my thought is that after everything happened with the Rocks Pirates, after they broke up, because Rocks died or whatever, every event happened at God Valley, that they broke up, and that Miss Bakin took her scientific knowledge and may have ended up being found by Dufeld, and then he brought her in on this, this Mads idea, and took her there and set her up, because we don't know, we don't know exactly when Mads was founded. We know that 38 years ago is when what happened with God Valley. So I would assume it was less time than that. So I'd say it's less than 38 years ago. And as I pointed out, Weevil is 35 years old, or at least that's his age that we've been told is his age, which I'm not going to deny that. He's probably about that age. And so my thought is that the Mads, area took place, that the Mads experiments and everything, that group was founded between 38 and 35 years ago, or 39 to 35 years ago. And that during those first time frames, I know that we get ages on we have ages on Queen and Judge and stuff like that. And I don't remember exactly what those ages are, but the other thought is that Bakin may have already had Weevil at that point in time. Maybe it could just be legitimately that he is Whitebeard's son, and that Whitebeard never knew about him because Bakin never told him. That, sometime after the Rocks Pirates broke up, maybe her and Whitebeard left together, and maybe, after a few years and he starts up his own crew and everything, and she, maybe, she gets pregnant and maybe she leaves because she doesn't know exactly how he's going to take it at that point in time, and she leaves. Or maybe just they had a rendezvous at some point in time and then she got pregnant and left. And it could just be that, Weevil is legitimately his son, their son. And then she, and then later on, she ended up being part of Mads. Because we know that, I think, because let's see here, Sanji is 21. I think Reiju is supposed to be 23 because she's 2 years older than Sanji and their brothers. So that put her, I think, at 23 or 24 range. So Judge would have had to have been starting to build up the Germa at that point in time, considering how much we see that they already have built up at that point in time. I would say at least 25 to 30 years ago is when he started doing that. So that does still land within that time frame of, there's a 10-year gap in there that could be used for when Mads was built. So my thought about this is that Vegapunk and Stussy and the rest of the group of Mads, or Vegapunk and Miss Bakin, built up Mads and everything with Dufeld's money, and they cracked the lineage factor, and then from there, Vegapunk and Miss Bakin worked on cloning, or that maybe that was her more, main thing was cloning, and she decided to clone herself first. Now, in regards to the origin of the name Buckingham, which I like that they threw that in there. I like the Buckingham. That's cute. So Buckingham obviously comes from the Buckingham Palace, which is the current royal residence and the administrative headquarters for the ruler of the United Kingdom. Had been Queen Elizabeth, for a good 70 years. Now it is currently King Charles. that has that that has that has taken up the crown and the throne and everything. And I just have an interest in I have an interest in like royalty and stuff like that anyway, just because I like history and that type of stuff. But slight bit of background on Buckingham. So it was originally known as Buckingham House, and that is the building that is at the core of the palace today. And it is this large townhouse that was built for the Duke of Buckingham in 1703. And he had the private residence of it for about had been the private residence of like that, like their ownership and everything, for about 150 years. And then in 1761, it was acquired by King George III, and he made it into a private residence for Queen Charlotte, who I think was his wife or daughter, one of the two, I don't remember exactly. And then it became known as the Queen's House. And then during the 19th century, it was enlarged by architects John Nash and Edward Bloor. I'm assuming I probably mispronounced it. Haha, Edward. And constructed 3 wings and everything that were added around the central courtyard and everything. And then eventually it became the residence for Queen Victoria when she ascended to the throne in 1837. And since then, all the way up until now, it remained the royal residence for the main residence for the royal family. Yes, other, the other princes and princesses and stuff like that and the children have like lived in like other places around London or like around England and stuff like that, but in the UK and such. But that has been like the main residence. That is where most of the administrative stuff, headquarters and stuff like that is from, and that's the official royal residence. And it has been that way for 186 years. And of course, at the end of the chapter, it's Buckingham Stussy that we get. And I know a lot of people were like, I looked at a couple of different like Reddit stuff. I was just like, oh well, Stussy and blah 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 blah. And like, well, at some point, Bucking was Buckin instead of Bakkin, and I'm like, I just remember it always being Bakkin, not Buckin. But whatever. Either one is fine. I don't really care how they did that, but I do like the fact that it is kind of like an additional reference to the royal family of England, because back in Dressrosa we had King Isabella II, who is, Elizabeth II, who is a reference to that, I'm assuming. And then now we have Buckingham, reference to Buckingham Palace. So there's that. And so my thoughts are in regards to like what Stussy is that, Miss Bucking cloned herself using the technology. Stussy was the successful clone. They may have had a couple of like unsuccessful ones, but Stussy is like the first successful one that they had. So I guess I'll make a comparison to Bleach, where we find out that, Mayuri had several different experiments, failed experiments, before he actually got to Nemu, before he actually got Nemu to be what he wanted her to be. And such. So there's like, I guess, a good comparison there. Not going to be surprised if someone else makes that comparison. But my thought is that, Stussy is this clone, and she's, while Stussy, or while Miss Bucking and Vegapunk might be more focusing on that, the other 3 dinguses are making their weapons of mass destruction that they can then use. And then when Mads gets broken up by the world government, and Vegapunk goes to work for the world government, because he definitely already has his devil fruit at that point in time. We know that. And then some point in that time frame is 22 years ago, is when everything happens with O'Hara, and we know that he goes to work for the world government at that point in time. Caesar may come with him. We know at some point in time that's when Queen goes and starts working with Kaido at some point in that time frame. And then Judge goes and starts building up the Germa Empire again, and starts making his clone soldiers and everything, taking the cloning technology and adapting it to what he needs. And eventually he's basically like streamlined it a fair amount. And that's why we have all of the clones that the German use and such, that, you know, Big Mom wanted to get her hands on and use that technology. And then Caesar eventually goes off, and we know eventually Caesar ends up on Punk Hazard. Vegapunk also ends up on Punk Hazard at some point in time, and they're both there at the same time. I think Caesar causes the huge explosion, and then, you know, Caesar ends up developing, you know, based on Vegapunk's own artificial devil fruit that he makes, that's based off of Kaido's lineage factor. I will make a slight point here of Vegapunk does not seem the type to want to torture someone. I will make a point of that, because we know that for King, that when he was captured by the world government, when he was like, you know, late teenager, before, you know, when he met Kaido and everything, when we got that flashback for King, which we'll possibly be getting soon in the anime, where we get this flashback, so we'll get to see what King looks like all in anime form with his, you know, handsome face, and I like that idea. But what we kind of get was, we definitely saw that he was being tortured a whole lot by the scientists that were there. I don't think that was Vegapunk that was part of that experiment yet, because A, that probably lines up with the time frame that he was still working with Mads, and B, Vegapunk does not seem like the type that wants to torture people. That does not seem like something he wants to do. That seems like something Lilith would be okay with, but not Vegapunk himself. And I don't think he would have had his clone, you know, his, you know, satellite bodies at that point in time yet either. I don't think they were set up until he was setting up Egghead Island. But I think that King had been captured, or Alder as he was at the time, had been captured, yes, and was being held captive by the world government, and experimented on, but it was not by Vegapunk. And then eventually Vegapunk did end up having Punk Hazard for a while, and, you know, that's where he made the artificial devil fruit. That's what Momo ate, and that's where, you know, we get the artificial Ryo no Mi, model Seiryu, or whatever the pink version of a Seiryu dragon is. I don't know what that would be. Momo Ryu? I don't know. And eventually that's what happens there. Then eventually there's the explosion, and then, you know, island gets ice and fire terraformed or whatever, and then that's where Caesar has been based out of, and where he makes all the smile devil fruits, or makes all the sad and then gets turned into the smile devil fruits by Doflamingo and then sold to Kaido. Vegapunk just does not strike me as a type that wants to torture someone, particularly a kid, in regards to like how old King appeared to be at that point in time. So I think it was previous scientists that had gathered genetic material from King, and then eventually when Vegapunk got brought in, the world government, you know, the scientists at the time, gave him that genetic material, lineage factor that they had from King, and then that's what he used in order to help make the Seraphim. And that was just my thought on that, for a tangent for that, because Vegapunk does not strike me as the type that wants to torture someone, particularly torturing a child, because he, you know, that just doesn't strike me as that. I don't even think, you know, Lilith as his evil satellite would want to go that far. Doesn't quite seem like that type of thing. But back to Stussy and Miss Bakin. So kind of my thought was that, you know, Bakin goes off on her own, possibly has like either maybe Weevil was like a failed, you know, Whitebeard clone, or like a clone. A lot of people think of that now that we know about the cloning technology. A lot of people think that that's that. Maybe she did use Whitebeard's genetics and she threw in some of her own genetics, and that's why she can claim him as her son and as Whitebeard's son and all of that. And then it may have been that Vegapunk took Stussy with him, because maybe she was still like a small child at that point in time, and he just took her with him and like claimed her like as his daughter or something like that, and then took him with her. Took Stussy with him, and then kind of raised her, maybe in secret from the world government so they didn't know. Or it's a possibility she went with Miss Bakin. We don't know. That has to be explained to us. That's part of the, well, I wonder what happens here. But we also kind of, one of the other things that I did find funny, and that a lot of people have pointed out anyway, is that Higurashi, who is the old woman that's in, the flashbacks in Wano, that's in, Odin's story in Wano, that is, somehow related to Orochi and stuff like that, that's part of the Kurozumi family, that she has the powers of the clone fruit. And that we see her, touch her face and like zip through several different faces. And one of them is, of course, the young woman with blonde hair. And pretty much at this point in time, that basically is just like, no, that is young Miss Bakine from, 40-ish whatever years ago, when she was on the rocks, pirates and everything. Probably confirms that Higurashi and Senimaru, I think was the old guy, confirms that they were on Rox's crew, or at least had a fair amount of contact, to the point where she would have been able to touch Bakine's face when she was younger. And so it's like, that's revealed with the clone fruit, and then Stussy is Miss Bakine's clone, so I just like that Oda threw that in there. And my thought is that the Stussy clone, the clone Stussy, or Stussy, is very loyal to Vegapunk. Or at least that's kind of what I'm hoping, because there's like two ways that this can go. A, she's very loyal to Vegapunk, sees him as a father, and has a very high level of intelligence from being around Vegapunk. And if she's a clone of Miss Bakine, and if Bakine was a scientist, who has now just basically let her greed take her over at this point in time, because Oda has like the two ways of drawing older women. One is like Shaki, where they just look amazing even when they're older. And then, and like Shaki and Kureha and stuff, they just still look great when they're older. And then the other ones were just like, they did not age well. Or just like, hey, I want to draw a funny looking older woman, in regard to like Gloriosa. But, what I'm thinking is, Stussy eventually, joins CPI just Zero, or ends up getting trained through all of that, learns all of the different techniques that they have, learns hockey, armament and observation and everything. There's always a possibility she'd have Conqueror's hockey, but it doesn't quite seem that way, but I could be wrong. And she ends up, she helps Vegapunk by like feeding him information about what's going on her different missions and stuff like that, that she, that the world government wouldn't tell him otherwise. Because both Kaku and Lucci mentioned that, oh, well, you've been to Egghead Island. But she's like, yes, but it's been quite a while since I've been there. When they're on their way, they were traveling during the Egghead arc at the beginning of it. And she's like, yes, it's been a while, but she still knows how everything works. She's like, oh, that's an illusion. That's a hologram. That's a force field. And if you go too high up, you're going to get electrocuted. Kaku falls back down on the ground. You could have mentioned that sooner. Slipped my mind. Well, as slippery as your mind is. And my thought is that in that regard, for just like Stussy just likes watching Kaku suffer. And just like, that's just her little sadistic side that likes to come out, because we saw some of that when it came for, she killed Dufel and everything. We know that she's one that like kind of pushed Morgans into like making it seem that like Straw Hat was the one that bombed the tea party with the tomato box. So there's all of that. But the other side of that is Stussy Stussy is the clone. Maybe she was raised by Vegapunk, or maybe she was raised by Bakine, and then she got, she maybe found Vegapunk at one point in time, and he realized who she is. And then, since then, maybe he thinks he can trust her, but he can't, and maybe she's getting ready to backstab him. We don't know. She literally just like, well, I was going to say backstabbed Kaku, but more like, bit Kaku. Which brings us into the vampire portion of this discussion. So, Kaku's fighting Zoro. Zoro is, awakened giraffe zone. Good on you, Kaku. Is fighting Zoro, and then Zoro's just like, I am tired of all these wiggling wiggling opponents that like to slither around and zip around and stuff like that. Just use your frickin' swords. Um, and then Baki just like, or Stussy just bites Kaku, and then he falls to the ground. And like Lucia is just like, what the hell just happened? He's looking at her. She's just like, well, that was good. He fell asleep. Time for you to fall asleep too. Okay, that is a great way of introducing the Oda boxes for who she is. And then we get you Stussy, clone, blah, blah, blah. So I think I mentioned before in a different video where I talked about some of the other devil fruits, the mythical zone ones, that there is a Bato no Mi model vampire. That is a mythical zone. It's a game exclusive one. I don't remember which one. That is a devil fruit. It's used by a character called Patrick Redfield. He's not all that important. He's the bad guy in the game. His devil fruit allows him to turn into a vampire, and instead of sucking out people's blood, he sucks out like their life force, and then it helps rejuvenate the person's life force and makes them younger. And it allows a person to turn into either a full or a half vampire, hybrid type of a thing. In the video game, he turns into like a vampire hybrid at some point in time. He fights against the Straw Hats. At some point he drains some of Luffy's life force away, and Luffy gets, a little more shriveled, and he gets white hair and everything in the video game. Not Gear 5. But different. And then, so there's some of that stuff that happens. It's not a canon devil fruit. But it also is not known if it gives them like the same side effects as being a vampire, of like weakness to sunlight, garlic, crosses, holy water, or whatever you want to take. But it also allows the person to like I don't remember if they can summon bats. I don't remember exactly what it says, but like they get some other some other powers that happens with it. And a lot of people are going to be pointing out this devil fruit, of course. This is, I think, one of the ones I have not made a bead version of, but now I might just have to, just for the purposes of bead devil fruit. But my thought is Oda will, I don't think he's going to canonize that exact fruit. I think he might make like a slightly different version of it, because he already had to do that with like Perospero and his candy devil fruit that is a paramecia, as opposed to the Logia version that was used in a different One Piece film. That was, like a Logia version of candy syrup, and Perospero's is like a paramecia version of it where he can summon it, but he can't turn into it. Oda might do something similar with this, where it's just like, it is a zone devil fruit. And unless he just like literally just like messed with Stussy's DNA when they were cloning her, and it resulted in this. But it could be that there is this other version of this devil fruit, or it could be the, Oda has been able, Oda has already, Vegapunk has already proved that he can clone devil fruits. He did that with the green blood that's in all of the different Seraphim, for giving them like the paramecia powers and stuff like that. He made the cloned artificial version of, Kaido's fruit that he was upset about because the person is pink and not blue. And it could have been Stussy. This version of, Stussy may have this new version of this, vampire devil fruit that allows her to, access some of this power. Or it may, Oda might shift it around a little bit where it's just like, oh, she can't suck out people's life forces, but she can put them to sleep. And then like they stay asleep for a certain amount of time, and then they wake back up again, and maybe they're a little bit groggy, but they're fine. Although I love the fact that, and a lot of people are pointing this out, and I'm just going to point it out anyway, because I do love the fact that it's like when we see Stussy at the party, at the tea party, we see her talking to Dufeld. And she's just like, oh, this pudding reminds me so much of when I was young. And he's like, yeah, when was that? Steps on his foot. I love that. Backstory there. Now we got some more of that backstory. Because Dufeld may have been aware of the fact that she may be a clone, or he may just think that she's actually like Stussy, Miss Baki, and just hasn't aged or something like that. I was gonna say, or Bakin may have a devil fruit, but I don't think that's the case because she looks very old. And unless she's, because if she does have a devil fruit that allows her to suck away people's youth and restore her own youth, she ain't using it. But also at the tea party, with Smoothie there, we have her having these different drinks that she can make with her devil fruit, and she makes like, like the essence of a squeezed giraffe, which just sounds very strange anyway. And she makes that, and that's what we have Stussy drinking. That's what Stussy drinks at the party during the beginning of the tea party. She drinks that, and it's just like, well, maybe she had more of a craving for giraffe juice, which just sounds very, very odd and very, very wrong. And I'm sorry, Kaku. Um, but that's what you get. So, I mean, like, and Oda does so much with his stuff that it's just like, well, I'll have this funny thing here, and then later on it just ends up paying off so many years later, regardless of whether or not he planned it, you know. But, I just wanted to go into that. So there's like two things that could happen. Stussy is either A, ally of Vegapunk, will help him, will help the Straw Hats in that regard. Will help with all of that, or B, she betrayed Kaku and she's going to betray Lucci, and then she's also going to betray Vegapunk for her own means of whatever that could be. We don't know. We'll find out. Hopefully find out more next week. Either it will be we'll find out, or Oda won't touch on that at all, or we'll get like 2 pages of it at the end of the chapter, and the rest of it will be like, I don't know, Law's battle with Blackbeard and like Kid on Elbath. We'll find out. But yes, I love the Hex Girls. Go look up the Hex Girls. They're great. They have great music. But I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.